Hi, I'm Holly. I am the Amity Knitter, or as I've been calling myself, the OG Amity Knitter. So welcome, Amity Knitters, to my channel. I'm very excited to have you today. I've had some people send me emails and things asking about hats because I made a comment about how I like to make hats in my last video. So I thought I would do a really quick video about some of the hats that I'm working on. Someone asked for my Ravelry page, and I have put it on as in my profile on my knitters, but I am known by Amity Knitters, no break, just Amity Knitters, all one word, on Ravelry, and you will find me. And when this person asked me, I went immediately to my Ravelry page, which I'm very good at storing patterns, not as great as putting my own makes up there. So I realized that a lot of projects that I do have photos of were not there. So I figured I better do that. And then I thought this might be a little bit quicker to get a little bit more information out there. So let me share a little bit about some hats. So the first thing is I thought I would share the last hat that I made with a pattern. I don't typically use patterns, but every now and then I come across a pattern that I feel like just calls my name or that I love so much. So the pattern, the last pattern that I found, and I don't know how, oh, well, this is 2012, so I do know how old this pattern was. I found this pattern 2 years ago, and I made it 2 years ago. So this is the pattern here, and it's Poison Ivy is the name of the pattern by Ivy Brambles. I just thought this was a beautiful pattern. I love the shape of the pattern because it's got the flat-ish top, and I really loved it. I also really liked the Latvian braids. I'd never done them before, and I thought it was fabulous. So I decided to do a different color scheme. So here is my hat. So we'll start at the top. So here's the crown of the hat. And you can see my Latvian braid is not a braid. It is miserable. I will say my first Latvian braid is beautiful. What happened up here, I have no idea. I've often said that I can't knit after 8 o'clock at night because my brain is not focused on what I'm doing. Maybe I'm watching television or I'm listening to something or I'm more tired than I realize. So I decided to stick with it. When I realized what a horrible braid this was and how terrible this connection is and the knitting in the round, and I decided it's on the top of my head. No one's going to see it. It is for me, and it was only my second Latvian braid, so cut yourself some slack, Holly. And that's what I decided to do. So I love the top of the hat. The hat is made with Malabrigo Rios. I have quite the stash of Malabrigo Rios. It is one of my favorite yarns to knit with. I love the superwash, I have to say, the merino, because I knit a lot for kids and I can knit almost anything that, somebody can toss in a washing machine. And I wanted it to feel extra soft. So this has been washed a couple of times. So it's not quite as flat, but it does work. And I will tell you, when I tried to block it, it took me a few minutes to figure out how to do it. I kept trying and I was pinning it down and I did all sorts of things. And then I set up several bowls on top of each other. And then I put a lunch plate and I just hung this over the top. And then I pinned the bottom to a mat that I had below it. I thought that's got to be one of the more brilliant knitting hacks that I have come up with in my knitting years, but I just loved it. And then here, I really like the roll in the hat. That is in the pattern, so you can see that the roll is here in the pattern, and it just gives it such a soft edge, but I really feel like it just makes that braid pop out. So I was so happy with that. And I like these colors better for me. The white, I feel like I would have looked like a bunch of cherries on my head, but this I think is wonderful. So these colors work, and it's super warm. I really like it. I actually keep it in my car 12 months a year in the little pocket behind the driver's seat. I have a pair of knitted gloves that belonged to my mother, and then I have this hat that lived there, and I did break them out the other day. In New England, it is a little chilly these days in the morning. So that was my last hat that I made with a formal pattern. Then I've mentioned a few times that I was working on some hats for the movie Wicked, but the first hat that I started out on was a hat that I've called, sort of my name for it, is Off to See the Wizard. And these are not necessarily the colors of Wicked. I was thinking more of the original Wizard of Oz. My granddaughter loves the movie The Wizard of Oz. And she talks about the movie, and I thought, I need to design something that she could wear. This is an adult size hat. I wanted to be able to try it on myself as I was going. So this hat, I did a 3-inch rib that in the black and the green for the Wicked Witch, and then transitioned in. And I wanted to do a little bit of experimentation with the different stitch depth. So with the garter, I pulled this back 4 or 5 times. But what I ended up doing is a row of garter with another row in between of just basic stockinette. It looked so much better, and it actually lays flatter. And then this is the section that I'm calling Dorothy. So this was Dorothy. This is for her pinafore dress that it's iconic. And I thought, oh, that really works. This, I decided to go with yet another row of the garter up here. It doesn't need it. The hat does not need that extra length. So my prototype, it has been a true prototype. It definitely has been a test for me. This section here, I don't know if you can see, I have not blocked this. I'll be really honest with you. So this section here, if you can see the opening, the lace more in it, I did a simple yarn over. This is really going back to the Emerald City. So that's why I chose the darker green. I'm just using leftover pieces that are in my Malabrigo tub to try to get through some of that. I said, I'm going to practice or create as I'm going. I didn't want to buy any new yarn. I wanted to use what I had. I knew I had a really good collection of colors. I mean, it's a full tub. I shouldn't, I can say I had to look deep. I really didn't. But my stash, I've been trying to work through it. I've been picking up new things and allowing myself to do that, but at the same time reminding myself that I do have 4 or 5 tubs in my stash. I was able to destash quite a bit last year. I sold a little bit on Facebook Marketplace and on Ravelry. And then I went through it and I made several hats as gifts, and I made some cowls, things like that. I like to restock the hat bin that lives in the front closet where our winter coats are, because you never know, and then they get left in places. So I just feel like people end up with a great hand knit hat, but we always have them. So I try to do that. And whenever people visit, you never know what the weather's going to be like, or if you're going to decide to go for a walk. I mean, and for me, a knitter, when I want to knit small, hats are what I want to work on. So I shifted in again to the lighter green. I didn't need to do that. So that stripe will be coming out again as I move forward with this design. And then this is the end of the red that I had. So this truly was the end. This was as close to the red as I could get from my bin. So this was for the ruby slippers. So this is my hat that, again, I've called Off to See the Wizard. I don't even know the name of the hat. So Off to See the Wizard. I will block this hat. This hat does fit. I like how it fits. I will take the hair clip out of the back and show you. So I like how it fits. I don't have too much extra up here. I thought I might put a pom-pom on it for myself, but we will see. So there's my hat. So I'm going to leave that on. Then I'm going to move into what I'm working on now. So I had some Cascade 220 in the Aran weight, and I had this gorgeous emerald green. And I bought this skein or hank to knit a few swatches as I was going to be knitting an Aran sweater, and I wanted to test it. So I did, and to me it was, the weight of it was a little bit more than I thought that I needed. And I ended up going with a more worsted weight, and it's actually DK worsted weight. It's not a full worsted weight hat, and it's a little warm in here. So let me take that off. So I chose this, and I was going to do a solid hat. Color work, as I've mentioned in a previous video, is my favorite thing to do, but I didn't have any more of the Cascade 220. So I stopped at Webb's and I picked up this color, which I don't know if the color's actually on here. Let's see. No, I can only tell you it's color 875. So to me, it's not, if looking at it with the naked eye, it is not beige and it is not gray. Grayish, I know, has become a term, and I think that's what it is. So these two together, I didn't want stark white, so I like these two together. I think it's subtle. So I started working on a hat, and the way that I do hats is I decide, what am I going to do for the rim first? Do I want it to fold up, or do I want it to roll, or do I want just a little bit of ribbing? And then what kind of ribbing? Do I want a cable rib? Do I want a 1-1 rib? Do I want a 3-2? Whatever I'm going to do. So I kind of decide that piece first. And then where do I go from there? When I'm designing a hat, I do a really small swatch just to get my gauge. For Rios, I know my gauge on a size 7 is 4.5. I know that. I've got enough swatches laying around that I don't have to think twice about that. So I do that. But with the Cascade 220, it's not a yarn that I've knit with before. I've knit with Cascade 220 and other weights, but not in the Aran weight. So I did a quick swatch for that to see where I was. And then I decided to cast on 90 stitches, an adult size hat, and then see where I get. So once I did the edging here, which is a 3-2 rib. So I did the 3-2 rib, and then I decided I wanted to introduce the gray, but how was I going to do that? So I wanted to do a gentle transition. So there's the transition from the ribbing, we'll pull that down, from the ribbing into the first section of color work. So what I do is I just sketch out what is going to be coming next. So I know that I have 90 stitches. I chose the number. I mean, it could have gone 88. I could have gone 92. I chose the number because it's divisible by so many different numbers. And I could work that into many different patterns as I was going along. So this is, I take just a scrap piece of graph paper, and I'm sad to say in some cases I don't keep them. They usually end up getting written on both sides. I'm crossing out, and you'll see in this one that as I was just laying it out, it was sort of unnecessary for me to have it be as wide as it was. So I looked at what I wanted to do, and I wanted that gray to have a place. So here's what I came up with. So I just did a 3-stitch repeat, 1 of the gray and then 2 of the green after the single row. So here you'll see I said shifting 3-stitch pattern. So when I wrote the word shifting for myself, you'll see that as I was sketching it out, it moves. So in the next section, I did just 1. So I did 2 gray and then 1 green. So I've got that stripe effect almost on the rim of the hat. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop it on this styrofoam head so that you can kind of see it a little bit better. So I have the styrofoam head that I get to see how things are and where they're laying and what I want. And I didn't want the white to pop so much that I felt like if I did this, I just said white, I meant gray. If I did this section here with the same depth of the gray tone, that I think the hat wouldn't have lost the green. I may be wrong when I get to the end, but we're gonna see. So again, I start to sketch things out here. So this is the next section that I sketched out. And I looked and said, you know, I really don't want to do more than 10 or 12 rows in my pattern. I knew where I wanted the hat to go, and I wanted a clean edge here before I start decreasing. And so with this yarn, I was knitting the hat to 7 inches before I start doing decreases. And I was exactly at 7 inches right at the top of the white. So I added the 2 green to soften it up a little bit and to give a little bit more depth to the decreases as I start. And I'm going to decrease on it's a pattern of 90 stitches. So I'm going to decrease the first round on the 8th and 9th stitches as I go around for an even distribution. So I laid it out in the way that where would it start? So I'm knitting. So here I am, this is where I'm starting, and I'm actually starting down here in this row. So how is that going to go? I knew I wanted a 10 row repeat, and it needed to be divisible into 90. So this is a 6 stitch repeat. So that's how I move along. Sometimes I feel like I do need a little bit of inspiration. So I grabbed a couple of books, and well, I'll just show you. Here's the end here. This is my back. So I really liked this. It feels really loose here, not super tight, but it feels very warm. The Aran weight is really nice. I like the 3 stitches with the stockinette and then the 2 purl in between. So I am, as I said, doing decreases, and I hope to finish this hat tonight. I've got to block this one, and then I'm also going to block the Off to See the Wizard hat. And then I have yarn ready to go to start on Wicked hats. So I've got in my brain what those are going to look like. And so I'm going to get started on those and hopefully finish one this week. Maybe one, I'll at least get it started before the end of the week. And then the third hat, because I'm going to see Wicked with 2 friends. We have tickets. We are going on the 23rd of November. So one of us might be wearing a hat with needles still attached, but I hope not. We will find out. So I thought I would share 2 books that I go to. I like textured stitches, but again, color work is my favorite thing. I bought this book many, many years ago when I was first learning color stitch. So when I took a class in color stitch knitting at Webb's, I happened to live just 5 miles away. So I was really fortunate to be able to go to Webb's and take that class. And it was on a Saturday. It was 4 weeks in a row, and it was a different type of color stitching. There was Intarsia, there was Fair Isle, etc. And so I did a different type of stitch each week for 4 weeks. The first week, I had only been knitting for about 6 or 7 months at the time. The first week, I went home. I am not ambidextrous, and I'm not as comfortable doing anything with my left hand, hand dominant, but I felt like I need to learn this. So after the class that day, I went home and I knit all day and just kept going and going and going and going until I was able to use both of my hands, and my tension was even with both hands. And from then on, I felt like I found my place with knitting, or at least I found a huge connection to knitting. I keep wanting to show you my Jaws shirt. So Amity Knitters, Amity means friendship. So this book, you'll see all my little Post-its are shoved in here everywhere. But, we can just open it up. What I love about this book is it tells you how many rows the pattern is and how many stitches across. So there are so many different ideas. And sometimes you just need a little bit of inspiration. Sometimes I open the book and I say, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I use the bleed. Or I open the book and I say, I really like that, but something's missing for me. So this is an example. So here I'm holding this hat. This pattern, this diamond, almost argyle pattern. I should slow down talking. So the argyle pattern, when I looked at it, I really liked it in the book, but I felt like it needed something extra. All I did was add these 2 stitches in the middle. So I borrowed, or was inspired by, however you want to say it, from this book. And then I just added the 2 stitches in my design, because I kept looking at it. Originally, I had done a whole line. I thought, no, that really divided it. Then I tried to do a cross, and I did a center. I just kept sketching it out and trying different things. I crumpled a whole piece of graph paper just trying to look at it. And I finally thought, it doesn't need that much. I just wanted to fill in a little bit here. So I ended up doing the 2 stitches, but I left the rest of it the way it was. And then again here, this is just the simple solid round every other, and then another solid round. And I feel like that's a go-to for anybody who likes to do color work. So that was sort of how I came up with this in here. It's just a little bit of a change, but for me, in my looking at it, it was enough of a change. The other book that I use quite a bit here is the Knitting Stitch Bible. This one, you won't find as many post-its. There's only a few in here because the textured stitches, there's a lot there are a lot of cabling and things in here. It's a beautiful book and I love it, but I don't do a lot of cable hats. If I'm going to do a cable, I might do it more in the ribbing than I would in the body of the hat. I really love the color work, but I do like cable and color work together. So that book does not get broken out quite as often, but this one is always the first book on my knitting bookshelf in my closet, and it sits there. I have a closet in our guest room that's just where I store all of my books and my sewing machine and fabric and the vacuum, things like that. But I have shelves of books in there, and I've really pared down to have what I'm using. And then I have binders of patterns that I've kept. So at some point in the future, I'll give you a tour of that space. But this book is always right on the front of that shelf. So you probably noticed the Christmas tree behind me. It's pretty hard to miss. I thought I would just let everybody know that, yes, my tree is up. It is early November. We've had 2 years of very, very few decorations. In 2023, we both had COVID the weekend after Thanksgiving, and I was unfortunate enough to rebound and have it twice in the month of December. So we canceled the holidays completely, and we had no decorations in our home. That was in 23, and then in 24, everything that we owned was packed because we were moving to a new house, and the house fell through days before the closing. So everything was packed. We knew where nothing was. It was a pretty sad holiday. We did manage to find our artificial tree and put it up. It had tinsel on it, but that was it. We didn't have anything else in our house out. We ended up having dinner at a folding table in our living room. It was fine. It was lovely. It was a beautiful Christmas, but I really miss the decorations. So I voted to put the tree up really early. So we've been slowly decorating it. I felt like November 1st I could do that. So we've been slowly decorating it over the last week, putting a few ornaments on here and there. But I will be fully decorated for Christmas by Thanksgiving. And it just feels really sweet. I have to say that. It feels really nice. So I thought I would be in front of the tree today to say, yes, we are those crazy people in the neighborhood. Up until a couple days ago, we kept the blinds shut so that nobody knew. And now I'm all about, hey, tell everybody that the tree is up here. So we are celebrating Christmas a little bit early, or at least going to enjoy all the decorations for a little bit longer. So I have my Jaws shirt on. This Jaws shirt, I will give full credit to the Atlantic White Shark Conservation Group. And they're an amazing group, and they happen to be out of Cape Cod, which is at the other end of Massachusetts. I'm in Western Mass, and they're in Eastern Mass, out on the Cape. And it's a fabulous organization that is doing worldwide education about white sharks and what's happening at Cape Cod and what's happening in other places around the world, climate change, and a whole bunch of other things. So it's a wonderful organization, and I love my Jaws shirts. So wanted to share that. And then I wanted to give you a heads up about what's coming next week. So this is a kind of a funny week for me at work. I am a fundraiser by day. I work for a local nonprofit organization. I've been a nonprofit fundraiser for nearly 40 years. And I love my work, absolutely love what I do. So this week, Tuesday, is Veterans Day, and our office is closed. So I've made arrangements to go to Green Mountain Spinnery in Vermont. And we will be going up in the morning, arriving to have a personal tour of the spinnery. I'm very excited. I have been to the spinnery. I've bought yarn. I have several of their patterns. So I called a couple weeks ago when I realized I was going to have this day off and asked if I could come up and could I film for my very new, a YouTube channel, Amity Knitters. And they were incredibly gracious and said they would love that. So I'm going up on Tuesday. I'm very excited. I'm also going to get to interview one of the owners and then one of the employee owners. If you've never heard of Green Mountain Spinnery, Green Mountain Spinnery is a cooperative spinnery. So I can't wait to share all of the details on exactly what that means to be a cooperative spinnery. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I hope to have at least one video from my trip to Vermont posted later next week. That is on Tuesday. I will be back at work on Wednesday, so I will be editing video in the evenings and will do my best to get a video out next week because I'm just so excited. And so I'm also following up with several people that I met at the Fiberfest of New England when I went last weekend, and that was just amazing. I met so many cool people and people who had amazing makes and fabulous booths and incredible projects and patterns and farms and so many things. So I am going to be scheduling several visits over the next couple of months that I'm going to get to share with all of you. So thank you again for finding my channel. Please subscribe and like. I would be so grateful. I'm trying to grow the channel and share more of my makes and my trips and my visits with incredible people, and to share with you and introduce you to people that maybe you don't know. So I'm very excited. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, and I hope to get a chance to meet many of you in the future. Amity, as you know, means friendship. Oh, I will share another line from the movie is, you're going to need a bigger boat, but we've made it into you're going to need a bigger bag. And there's also a line from the movie where the 3 barrels and the character Quint says he can't stay down, not with 3 barrels he can't. So at the end of this video, if you watch the last screen, there's a boat in the background and 3 yellow balls of yarn. So you can't make a sweater, not with 3 balls you can't. Thank you again, and I hope I convert all of you to not only being a knitting fan, but being a Jaws fan. Thank you again. Bye.